Hi folks, in this video a modular 8-pin, sometimes known as an RJ45, but more properly referred to as an 8P8C crimp-on connector onto the end of a Cat5 twisted 4-pair cable. Alright, so if you do happen to have a boot that goes with it, some do, some don't, it's not mandatory, put that on first. Okay, got my boot on. Then I like to take my scissors and make a cut so I can open up the wire. Some open more easily than others. And then I make a small little nick so I can use this. See this stuff? This is called ripcord, or sometimes it's called dental floss. It's just a little thin string. Not every cable has this in it, but most do. So take that little rip string or ripcord and pull it where the nick is. So what you can do, what you're doing is essentially using the string to tear a line down the side of the jacket. And the reason you're doing that is so that you can cut the jacket off without nicking the wires. So when I made that first cut, remember, there's a high probability that I may have nicked the wires inside. You don't want to have that before you crimp. So you rip the cord back, and then this is known as fluting, which basically means to cut off the edges of the wire in such a way that when you're done, that's not my best work, but what you should end up is basically with kind of a nice round, even end to the jacket all the way around. And the better it is, the more you can get it that way, the better, because when we go to crimp, you'll see why it matters. Anyway, this cable is a little more tricky to work with than others. I find plenum cable especially is a little easier to work with because it has kind of a more rigid constitution. Anyway, when you're done with that, get rid of the rip string. Don't need the rip cord anymore. Okay. Then what you want to do, and this is the tricky part that messes up a lot of people, is knowing how to roll out the wires in the proper order. So you got your four pairs in here: a blue pair, orange pair, green pair, and brown pair. So you've got 8 wires total. So what I do is I kind of try to get them in the general area where I'm going to want them before I start. So I do what's known as a 568B termination. There's 568A and 568B. All the difference is where you put the orange and the green pairs. And the B termination, the orange pair goes on the far side when you're looking at it down from the top. On an A termination, the green is replaced with the orange. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a few minutes. All right, then what I want to do is cut off some of the slack, because you're only going to need about ½ an inch right here. So, cut off to where maybe you've got like about an inch left. Okay, so I've got about an inch of wire there. Then what you want to do is you want to unroll these guys. Now I find that sticking my fingernail there in the edge of the twist kind of helps me get some leverage on it to untwist it. You want to untwist them back to where the collar of the wire is, but not any further. You don't want to go back any further. Just untwist as much as you need. Then the green. So the way the order works is that as you're looking down at the crimp from the top, the white and the white, orange, and the orange are going to be to your far left, and then the green gets split. So the green, what you do is the white green side, or what's known as the tip of the green, the wire that's more white than green, and the solid green, or the green white, which is more green than white, is going to go on either side of the blue pair. So now I'm untwisting the blue pair. So when I'm done, what I'm going to do is have the blue pair in between those two. And the blue is actually the one pair that's in a little bit of a different configuration. As you're doing this, you'll notice that all the whites usually end up towards the left side as you're looking down, and all the solids end up on the right side. The blue is the exception. If that's not making sense, just hold on, it'll make sense here in a minute. As I'm doing this, what I'm doing, you'll see me as I'm tugging on the wires, because what I'm doing is I'm kind of wiggling them to kind of straighten them out, because it's kind of like hair that's been in curlers, all day. It's got a wiggle in the wire, and or a wave in the wire, and I'm trying to flatten that out. And then lastly, just going to do this brown pair here, and then we'll be ready to get started. Okay. So the order goes like so. Starting from the left-hand side, as you look down on top of the wire. Now I know the way I'm holding this is actually opposite from what I'm saying from the way you're watching the video. But if you're holding this in your hand, on the far left you've got the white, orange, and then the orange. Then you've got the white, green, and then you've got the blue, the solid blue. Then you've got the white blue. Then the other side of that green, which was the solid green, and you got the white, brown, and then the brown. All right. So this is a 568B termination. If this was an A termination, the only difference would be is that the green and the orange would just change places. You take the white orange and put it where the white green is. You take the solid orange, put it where the solid green is, and of course then take the appropriate greens and put them back over here on the far right. That's the only difference. At the end of the day, when you're making a patch cord and you're doing both ends, what matters is that it's a wire-for-wire connection on both sides. Whereas even if I were to do this in a wholly different pattern, as long as that same pattern matched on the other side, we'd be okay. But anyway, so here we go. So what I do now is I've got them kind of flattened out like that. Is I take my finger there and my thumb here, I kind of just pinch it almost about a little less than the length of my thumbnail, and I cut off everything right above my thumb in a flat, straight across, like I was doing a haircut. See how that's flat like that? All the while keeping this pinched because I don't want any of these wires to fall out of order. Okay, and this can be a little tricky when you're first doing this, and you may have to do this more than once before you get it down. Now the other tricky part is, so just so you can see about how much I've got left, it's roughly about, 3/4 of an inch from the jacket. Then I take the connector, holding it with the pins facing up, and I'm going to take these flattened wires and I press them against the bottom of this. See this little square opening there? I'm going to press them against the bottom and slowly slide them in, watching that each one of those wires should stay in the place where I left it, because they all stay in order the way I left them, and that they all go down into an appropriate wire slot. There's actually 8 little slots there at the end. And so what you want is for them to all go in the appropriate slots. Occasionally you'll get some that give you trouble where 2 wires will try to go into one slot. Or what happens, especially when you're a beginner, is the wires fall out of order. So you might have to waste a few of these to get it down. Then what I like to do is once I've got them in there as far as they'll go, is I like to take the jacket and just kind of push up on the jacket. Because in a perfect world, what you want is for the jacket to end up right in front of where the crimp is. So the crimp is this little like 1/8 inch section here in the back. That's going to be the crimp. That's the part that actually bites down into the jacket to hold the end on there. All right. At the same time that crimp bites in there, all these little golden pins up here are also going to be biting down into the respective copper wires. You can't really see it on the camera, but if you ever want to check to make sure you're all the way in, is you can flip it over. It's a little easier to see on the back that the wires have gotten all the way to the end. What you don't want is a situation where maybe some but not all of the wires have not reached all the way to the end, because when the golden pins get punched down, they need to make contact with those wires. All right, so push my jacket in a little bit more. Now I'm ready to crimp. Take my crimping tool, slide it into there, give it a nice cinch. Okay, this is a Klein tool. I used to have an amp tool, which I liked a little better. This is a Klein tool. It's got 8 pair, 6 pair, and 4 pair crimping dies on it. You'll see these come in different variations. I like to do mine twice. I like to give them a good squeeze to make sure I'm really on there all the way. And that's that. Okay? Now listen, if you're just first starting out, don't feel bad if you mess up the first few. I messed up several before I finally got these right. So just have a little patience and you'll get it down. You've got your boot, slide your boot back up on there, ready to go. Thanks for watching.